Chapter 2, Before the Herald, How Did We Get Here? Before looking at the future of improvisational theater, we must first look to its past. The Herald is the result of a long chain of events and ideologies, as well as nearly 20 years of experimentation by Dell and others. To understand how the Herald transformed improvisational theater and influenced American comedy, we must first understand what came before the Herald. In this chapter, I provide a brief overview of the history of improvisational theater, focusing on Commedia dell'arte, Viola Spolin, and the Chicago and St. Louis Compass Players and the Second City, leading up to Charna Halpern and Del Close's union in 1983 at I.O. Commedia dell'arte. From ancient Rome to modern-day Chicago, improvisational theater has taken on many forms and undergone numerous changes and incarnations. Some scholars link Greek and Roman mimes to the beginning of improvisational theater, but the most direct ancestor of improvisational theater comes from the Italian Renaissance and the Commedia dell'arte. Unfortunately, the origin of contemporary improvisation is not quite as simple as saying that improv started with the Commedia dell'arte and continues today, as many improv manuals have implied. Since Commedia dell'arte is the main root of contemporary improv, however, it provides a good starting point. The first signs of Commedia dell'arte and of formal improvisational theater appear in southern Italy as early as the 3rd century BCE, with the Atellan farce. The Atellan farce featured a troupe of actors that toured the countryside performing improvised farces that dealt with domestic or family problems or poked fun at historical or mythological figures, and were most often presented after the performance of a tragic play for the upper class. Much like the later Commedia dell'arte, the Atellan farce relied heavily on stock characters and situations, as well as broad physical slapstick and burlesque humor. With the growing popularity of the Atellan farce around the 1st century BCE, Roman authors began to write down the most successful and popular farces and began turning them into scripted plays. Subsequently, the Atellan farce faded away as a popular form of improvised theater. Despite its popular downfall, the idea of the Atellan farce was preserved by wandering mimes and street performers up until the Middle Ages. The Atellan farce had a profound influence on the development of Roman comedy, which can be seen in the plays of Plautus and Terence, who in turn were heavily influenced in the development of Commedia dell'arte. While their plays were obviously not improvised, they drew heavily on the Atellan farce, and as James Fisher argues, the similarities between the Plautine and Terentine stock characters and the masks of Commedia point to the former's influence on Commedia. While the Atellan farce and the plays of Plautus and Terence had a profound impact on Commedia, there remains no single source or fountainhead for Commedia. Some scholars posit that Commedia dell'arte was brought to Italy by Byzantine performers when Constantinople fell in 1453. Still others argue that it sprang up from the Commedia erudite, or learned drama, which were scripted plays often in Latin and taken from the plays of Plautus and Terence, and were performed at court or in academies. Since Commedia dell'arte and Commedia erudita were contemporary forms, it seems unlikely that Commedia erudita was instrumental in the creation of Commedia dell'arte. Rather, Commedia dell'arte can be seen in many ways as a reaction against Commedia erudita.